Okay, hey, good evening and thank you for tuning in. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, my name is Vincent Marzulli. I'm president and CEO of Marzulli and Sons slash Mars, award-winning service company, and I have been for the past 40 years. Now, I've been in this plumbing, heating, cooling industry for well over 50 years, okay? Even though I'm only 28, all right, in my head. And anyway, I'm also known within this industry all over the country, aka Vinny from Philly or Cousin Vinny from Philly. Have you ever seen that movie, My Cousin Vinny? Okay, with Joe Pesci and the two Utes. Like, what a classic movie. What a classic movie. Anyway, I just was talking to somebody the other day and I said, we were talking about that movie. He said, well, what is it? What is a grit? Okay. It was like a movie that was like way over the top. Anyway, you even saw Herman Munster. Herman Munster was the judge, and you saw him for the first time without any Frankenstein makeup on, and so on like that. But anyway, it was a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you might want to go back and just check it out for a few laughs. I'm telling you, you'll get a kick out of it. And this is not a paid program for My Cousin Vinny movie. This was just something that I always ask because it's a part of my elevator speech. Let me put it that way. Okay? So anyhow, when it came to that movie, listen, years ago, when it came out about 25 or 30 years ago, I was traveling around the country, actually on the national circuit as a speaker, and that was when the start of everything started to hit, and everybody started calling me Cousin Vinny from Philly. Now, they've been doing that for like 25, 30 years now. Now, I always ask that question, have you ever seen that movie? Just so I can get you to remember my name, Vinny, okay? And you can even call me Cousin Vinny, and I won't even be offended because this is not a politically correct series. Okay, now this series is solution tips to start and operate a successful business. A successful and sustainable business, I should say. Now this is day 4 with only one day left. We're going to start at 7:30 p.m. just like we have in the past, and it's being brought to you by yours truly, Vinny from Mars, M-A-R-Z, award-winning systems. That's another company that I have, award-winning service company and award-winning systems. Okay, now let me give you a kind of snapshot of the framework and the structure. I want to share with you several things, and this is my goal. My goal is to help you to reach the next level of success in your life and in your business. I think I shared with you in the past. This was my floor, and I went from my floor to my ceiling, okay? And that's as far as I went. And I'm telling you, if you listen to me, you could pick it up at my ceiling and take it to the next level of success for you. Take it anywhere you want it to go. Okay, that's my goal, is to help you to reach the next level of success for your business and for your personal life. Now, number 2 is that I want you to know that there's some things out there that you need to do in order to be compliant with the state of Pennsylvania, because that's where you guys are doing business, okay? And there's these forms that you need to know about and understand a little bit about so you don't get yourself in trouble. Now, number 3 is my goal is that I want you to walk away with an understanding of what it takes to do your, quote, due diligence, okay? In the event that you ever end up in court, you will have done your due diligence in your business. Now, this is an A-B session. The A is the cancellation, the notice of cancellation, and the B session is going to be the emergency work authorization form. They're both forms. But before we get started, let me review a brief disclosure, I should say. Listen, number 1, I am not by any means, nor do I profess to be, an attorney, nor am I a certified accountant or a financial advisor for that matter. And anytime that you're running a business, you should always, always, always seek that type of counsel, the counsel of those type of professionals that went to school for, those specific subjects. Okay, now, this purpose of this session is strictly educational, and it's only to provide you with information. Okay, it's simply just a simple training program to make you aware of the law that exists, the forms that you're going to need to be compliant, and in this particular case in the state of Pennsylvania, happens to be these two forms that are pretty critical. Okay, so let's get started with session A, the notice of cancellation. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the language of the law, and that's something that you should be looking into on your own when you have the time, okay, to get a better understanding of what it says, what it means, what it's really all about, okay? Now, you go online, you Google Pennsylvania unfair trade practices and or consumer protection law, and it falls under Article 201-7. Anyway, you're going to forget that. But in essence, it's the effect of rescission. Now, my purpose is to give you a brief knowledge of what it is, why it is, what these forms say, and what you're going to need to be compliant. Now, I know that some of you may already have hired an attorney to draft you some forms, and some of you have some language in regards to the law, and may have something in your invoices. Now, I can't tell you, okay? I can't tell you if it's right, if the language is right, wrong, or indifferent, okay, without seeing it. As a matter of fact, that's not even my job. I don't even want to get into that, although I have. But I don't want to get into that. What my purpose is, is to share with you, so that you become compliant and meet the criteria of the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's office regarding these laws that are expressed in the books, consumer laws, okay, as I previously mentioned. Now, I'm not an attorney. Just remember that. I'm not an attorney. And you may be questioning, well then, why is this information that I'm sharing, what makes it, even close to being sound or even acceptable for that fact? And that's a pretty legitimate question. So before I go into anything further, I'd like to share with you a little history, a little background. Several years ago, I had the privilege to go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's the capital of Pennsylvania. And I went to the State Attorney General's office, the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's office in Harrisburg, with two other individuals that were friends of mine. And anyway, the purpose of us going there was to help amend the state consumer protection law that was governing these Pennsylvania unfair trade practices and consumer protection laws, okay, that were on the books. It's the effect of the rescission. It's the notice of cancellation and the emergency work authorization forms. Now, believe me, there was only 3 of us that went. And when we went there, we were acting as consultants. And we were representing, ironically I say, we were representing all of the mechanical service trades in the state of PA. Plumbing, heating, drain cleaning, bathroom remodeling, HVAC, electrical, all of those. Now, at that particular time, I thought to myself, you know what? Might be smart if I bring along my personal company forms, my personal intellectual property for them to review, to make sure that they were compliant. So we together thoroughly reviewed them, between me and the AG's office, right across the desk. And we went line upon line in relation to the consumer law sections that were relevant to these points. Okay? And at that particular time, I was told that the information, after they reviewed my forms, the information that was on my forms, the language, the placement, the fonts, etc., all had met the Attorney General's criteria. Okay? And for this reason, I'm telling you that my forms were compliant. Okay? So what that means is I happen to know a little bit about the consumer protection laws, right? And I had drafted my own personal copyrighted information to use. Okay, now that we've gotten past all that, I just wanted to bring that up so you have a brief history. I'd like to briefly, review the forms, but I'm not going to get into the complete language in the law. That would take me like 4 hours at least. It's a 4-hour seminar to cover, but very much like telling time, okay, on your watch, if you got a watch. You don't need to know how all the internal mechanisms and the gears, how they all work, okay? You only want to know what? You want to know what time it is. You want to know the FaceTime. What time is it? So again, I strongly suggest that you go online to review the law for yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a snapshot of what the FaceTime is. What's it look like? Okay? And you go into the law, you're going to be able to find out what all the language says pertaining to the law and what it needs to be on those forms, everything that needs to be on those forms. But let me briefly get into the forms as we go along. First, I'm going to start with that notice of cancellation. Now, the very purpose of this particular form is to protect not you, it's to protect the consumer. It gives them 3 days to cancel the transaction after the initial signing and entering into a contract and signing an agreement. Now, this all falls under consumer protection laws. And these are the laws that are currently on the books. And they're enforced as well by the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's office. And they carry fines up to $5,000 per occurrence and or invoice. Now, I personally have some friends, personally known firsthand individuals that got hauled into the Attorney General's office because somebody turned them in or they had a problem. Okay? And, they were fined. They got fined. They called me up and they said, "Hey, Vinny, listen, I got a problem. Okay? Can you help me out?" And that's kind of how I kind of evolved into creating a better form that was in compliance with the State Attorney General's office. I had a whole bunch of stuff in my forms that was like, wrong answer. All made it null and void. And so I had to go back and revamp my invoice, and I had to revamp all my information. I'd take out all this stuff that was like not end user friendly in relation to the consumer. Okay? And this is especially important if you do service work where the goods and the services have a sale price of more than $25, okay? Or, they're contracted to be sold to a buyer at their residence. If that's the way you're doing sales, then you guess what? You need to have this law. This law falls under, like I said, Article 201-7, okay? Effect of rescission, okay? And just as a special note, let me help you out here. This is not really applicable to anybody doing commercial work or a new construction. However, I personally chose to use it on every single job, everyone. I didn't care regardless. We did commercial work, restaurants. I won't mention any names, but we did commercial, industrial, and we did a lot of residential service. Okay, so I had everybody signing these forms, so I would be assured that I would not have any kind of trouble collecting my money. Or if I ever ended up in court, at very least, I performed my, quote, due diligence. Now, let me share with you kind of how it works and exactly the way that it's written, okay? So, this is the way it's written. This is the way it's exactly written. At the time of the sale or contract, the buyer shall be provided with a fully completed receipt or a copy of any contract in the same language as used in the oral presentation. Now, it needs to be specific, showing the date of the transaction, the name, the address, the seller's information. Okay, you also have to have an X, okay, space reserved in the contract for a signature of the buyer on the front page of the receipt, and in bold-face type, a minimum size of 10 points, okay? And it has to be bold font. So there's specific things. And this is what it has to say. You, the buyer, may cancel this transaction at any time prior to the midnight of the third business day after the date of this transaction, the signing of this transaction. See the notice of cancellation form for an explanation of this right. That's why you have to give them these forms. Now, this statement that I just shared with you, this language, needs also to be on your invoices. It needs to be on the bottom, and it needs to be specifically stated in that same way. And it also needs to be in bold-face type, and it needs to be a minimum size of 10 points. Listen, you know, along with this whole specific procedure, okay? This is not a joke. It's a system. It's a systematic process that needs to be addressed if you want to operate a successful service business and you want to be on the up and up. Now, the customer needs to receive these, you know, completed form in duplicate. Okay, that was one of the things that I kind of line upon line picked out when I was with the Attorney General's office. I said that duplicate means, you know, it's not singular, it's plural. My English teacher would have been proud of me because I knew the difference between singular and plural. Plural means more than one, so duplicate means you had to have two, okay? And I decided that I needed to have three, you know, two for the customer and one for the company, okay? And it has to be a duplicate, and the caption on this form needs to read, Notice of Cancellation. So in order for the form to be compliant with the PA State Attorney General's office, it also needs to have this same language spelled out clearly according to their criteria. It's not my criteria, it's their criteria, okay? And you better have it right, or else it's going to become null and void. That's the way that they think. That's why I had to revamp my forms. Now, this is a very, very time-consuming, complicated form to put together, believe me, it really is, okay? Not to mention the process of how to make sure that it's completely filled out properly in its entirety, okay? It's got to be like time-stamped, etc. And that's only just a simple snapshot to inform you as to what you need in order to comply, okay? So it's not as easy as you would think, and there's a lot of little details in there that you need to be paying attention to. You'll always hear me say that. Pay attention to the details. It's the littlest thing that's going to take you and your business down, okay, if you're not paying attention. So what I'm saying is pay attention to these particular details. Well, guess what? It's a lot easier if you had to use a done-for-you template that works, one that works, okay? And so anyway, let me just keep on moving. That being said, let's go move on to this other form that is called the Emergency Work Authorization / Waiver of Right to Cancel. Now, this particular form leans toward the contractor's favor. Basically helps you to collect your money. Now, the consumer is actually, by signing this, they're waiving their right having to do with the notice of cancellation. And it's allowing you to be able to proceed to perform the service and the work that you're there for, okay? Now, the language, okay, has to state exactly that you, the buyer, having initiated the contract for the goods and the services of X company, would be your name, would fit in there. You're the seller for the remediation of a bona fide emergency. Hereby authorize the seller to immediately proceed with the delivery of the goods and the performances of services necessary to remedy this, quote, bona fide emergency by providing the seller with this authorization. Now, you agree to make full payment for the goods and the services provided. You agree not to exercise the right afforded you by the Unfair Trade Practice and Consumer Protection Law to cancel the transaction from the above date. Okay? Okay. Now, you, the buyer, attest that the attached estimate is an accurate description of goods and services which will be provided by the seller for the correction of the bona fide emergency. Now, the form also needs to include this particular print at the bottom, which says the PA Bureau of Consumer Protection, Office of the State Attorney General's Office, and it has to have his telephone number in there as well. Now, I happen to use on my forms, I use the address for Philadelphia because they also have a location in Philadelphia. Now, at the bottom, you also have to have some lines for the consumer's name, address, city, state, zip, you know, all the basic stuff. You need to have a contract number in there. You need to have the transaction date and a line for the buyer's signature, okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is this is not an easy form to create. It's not an easy thing to be putting together. But there's some questions that need to be addressed and answered. And one of the biggest questions is, what is this definition of a bona fide emergency? And who makes that determination? Okay, and now this is when the answer becomes a little bit tricky, because the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's Office had included into this law, okay, a definition for a bona fide emergency. Now, I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to get into that. But what I will tell you, and I'll give you a heads up. All right, I'll give you a heads up. Bona fide emergency renders the home uninhabitable. Okay, that's the type of language that they're using. Like, uninhabitable. That's pretty strong language, and it's what they call ambiguous. It's a little bit unclear, so to speak. And so you can kind of get around it if you know how to say the right things. And that's kind of like what I really would want to be sharing with you, how to say what needs to be said in the event that you get into a situation where you have to be able to address why it is that you said what you said. Okay? Anyway, you guys are probably just going along. You've been doing this and operating businesses without any paperwork at all, and maybe you just don't even care. Okay? However, what I'm trying to explain to you is legalistically, you can't just start or perform any type of work without the customer being informed, okay, and signing these forms, both notice of cancellation and the authorization form, emergency work authorization form, stating that it's a bona fide emergency and you can go along and do the work. Now, you would be in violation of the law and subject to the fines, okay, if you don't do that. However, there is a clause that allows you to do, you know, some work. It also falls under that same article, you know, 201-7, and you go down, and anyway, it has to do with the seller may also charge a fee for immediate preliminary steps without having to obtain a written emergency authorization. Okay, now this is really important when it comes to a customer challenging to take you to court. Having all your paperwork in order can stop or derail the process, you know, as it's moving forward. You know, and at this point, you know, you have to know how to negotiate a little bit so you can resolve the issues of concern. You've got to be diplomatic about it, okay? Not hard sell. You just got to be diplomatic and do it on the up and up and do it right, okay? Because you never want to go to court. You don't ever want to go to court. Listen, it's not going to be easy, number one, and the chances of winning are going to be like it's pretty tough to win in court. I've seen a lot of people that have lost because I used to do expert witnessing. So that I did go to court, but I never got sued in my business. I think I told you that before. Number one, I never got sued by anybody in all the time I ran the company for 40 years. Never got sued by anybody, not even once. Never. That's number one. And number two, I never had to sue anybody to collect my money because I had this fine print. I had this system in place. Okay? So it won't be easy to win, but at least you will have done your, what I call what? Due diligence. That's the wording that they use in court. When it comes to the law relative to this paperwork, and that will be in your favor if in fact you have done it. As a matter of fact, there's a clause in that article, and it comes under M, and I know because it's my last name begins with an M, Marzoli, okay? M like Mary, M like, Mars. The paragraph M reads as follows. Now listen up here, because this is really important when it comes to the courtroom. A notice of cancellation which contains the form and the content required by the rule or regulation of the Federal Trade Commission shall be in compliance with the requirements of this section, which is telling you that if you do your due diligence and you have an attorney, and you have to go to court, you have an attorney because you might have an escort or whatever, you need to have an attorney with you present, okay? At least you can inform the attorney that there's this clause. And you've done your due diligence to the best that you could, trying to be on the up and up with your business, running and operating a professional business, okay? You're not trying to do anything sleazy, and you're not trying to cheat anybody. You're just trying to do your job so you can put food on your table and a roof over your head for your family. And that's what you'll be saying in the courtroom if you ever have to go. But my point being, listen, you need to have these two forms. You need to have them, and you need to be able to present them to the customers if you want to be on the up and up and you want to take your business to the next level. Okay, the next level of success is up here. Okay, and you can't get there if you don't listen to what I'm trying to tell you, because I'm giving you $1 million advice for free. Okay, $1 million advice tips for free. Okay, maybe they're not $1 million, $1,000. It costs you that much to get an attorney to go represent you in court. All right. And then if you don't have any paperwork, you're going to lose. So you're going to lose out on the attorney fee. You're going to lose out on the day that you took off to go to work, to go down to court, and you're going to lose the money that you're trying to collect. Period. That's the way it's going to work. Believe me, I've been there and done that as, like I say, an expert. And I've seen a lot of guys come in and lose because they did not have their paperwork in order. That's one of the very first things that the judge is going to say. Let me see the paperwork. Bring that paperwork up here. Let me see what you got here. And if he's savvy enough, if he's smart enough, he's going to look at that and he's going to see that you don't have your paperwork in order. You don't have the 3-day notice of cancellation. You don't have the work authorization form. These guys are not altogether, uneducated. So they're pretty informed. And if he sees that you don't have the paperwork, bam, he's going to drop the hammer and he's going to call, he's going to take the side of, the opposing side, and he's going to give them, what they want, and you're going to be like shaking your head saying, like, what happened? Like punch drunk, like you got hit with a sucker punch from the side. You got hit because you were unprepared, and it's your own fault. That's the whole point to this whole thing. Be prepared. Be prepared. Okay? Got it? And in order to be prepared, you've got to do certain things. You've got to be ahead of the curve. And these tips, hopefully, are helping you to get to the next level. They're helping you to understand, like I started out with, the goals. And in the end, like I said, it's going to help you in the event that you have to go to court. And nobody wants to see you go to court. So take the time, take these things, look them up, listen to what I said. I hope you took some notes. I hope you wrote them down. I hope you can implement them into your business, and I wish you the very best success in your business endeavor as you go to the top, as you move closer to the top, okay? And on that note, it's Cousin Vinny, quote Cousin Vinny from Philly, checking out. All right, I want to say good night, and again, before I go, I just would like to say I certainly want to thank you all for tuning in, and I appreciate the time that you took out of your life to be on this, opening up this video and watching it. And like I said, I know that you almost cannot not learn anything here. All right, you will, and I know it's been a very positive session. Okay, and on that note, Cousin Vinny, check it out. Have a great evening, and I'll see you again tomorrow night, same time, same place, depending on how I present these videos. Anyway, be there, okay? I got an offer that you can't refuse, all right? Take care. See ya.